Here I am in Leichhardt Dog Park, which is the site that I have chosen to install my latest piece of work entitled Translation. The idea from this piece of work came from my mid-year show, where I made work that went into the Nikau Reserve near to Paraparaumu. The idea for this work came about from seeing the trees in the Nikau Reserve, the Nikau palms that have been there for hundreds of years, as guardians of the space. They kind of represent what the land was like before the townspeople came along and cut down the trees to turn into spaces for houses and roads and the town centre. I used my imagination to create images to put on the trees that I thought the trees would want to talk to us about. For example, one of them wanted to see the view from the top of the hill. Another wanted to see images of the birds that flew around and landed in their branches. Others wanted to know what happened to the non-native trees that kept getting cut down beside them. So this is kind of how the ideas came for that big installation that I did there. And so then I wanted to take the installation into suburbia. And when I thought about suburbia and the way that we live within suburbia, I thought the trees weren't really guardians there, because in suburbia we cut the trees down and we plant them to our will. It's not a natural selection process, and the trees aren't allowed to get as old as they would like to. And so I thought, what could be the guardians in suburbia? And I saw the lampposts as the guardians, because the lampposts, they light up our streets and they keep us safe. And people don't really pay an awful lot of attention to lampposts. We only really pay attention to lampposts if they're not working. But there is somebody who pays a lot of attention to the lamppost, and that is the dog. So in New Zealand, on my street, I went around and took photographs of all the dogs that lived on the streets, and then paired them up with their particular lamppost that was closest to their house. I received very positive feedback about the dog installation on the lamppost in New Zealand, and when I came to Sydney, I thought I could take the idea further. There's a very different dog culture in Sydney to what I experienced in New Zealand. Firstly, I didn't think there would be many dogs in Sydney, being as it's a city, but actually there are a lot of dogs in Sydney. In fact, I would say there are even more dogs than cats, and me being a cat person found this quite surprising. But it almost seemed that nearly every other person owned a dog, even if they lived in a flat or an apartment. So I ventured out around Sydney to try and find more information about the dog culture that goes on here. The first place I went to was a place called Paws Point in Potts Point in Sydney, which is right in the centre. Paws Point is a fantastic little dog deli. It's a boutique place, it's very expensive, and it sells designer dog houses, designer dog clothes and dog costumes, dog beer, beautiful sparkling dog collars, and really caters to the inner city dog market. So I went in there and I had a discussion with the assistant, and she suggested that I went to some of the dog parks in Sydney to find my photographs of dogs. And she particularly suggested the Leichhardt Dog Park, which is where I am today, because there's a dog cafe right in the middle called Bones. This cafe is completely supported by the council, and the tables and chairs are all outside. And the ground underneath the tables and chairs is kind of like a sandy, stony mix, which every day is washed down by the councils to produce a hygienic place for people and their dogs to sit. And the people can have a coffee and a cake, and the dogs can have a puppuccino. Really, it's all served there, including dog treats. So this is a fantastic social place for people to come. I came down to Leichhardt Dog Park on several occasions to collect photographs of dogs, and I met some absolutely lovely people at the same time. And what I really noticed was what a sociable place it is to be around dogs and in a dog park. It's as though, because dogs have no boundaries between themselves and they quite happily run up and play with each other, it breaks down the boundaries between the communication of people as well. I wanted the installation to be in a place where there'd be high dog and people traffic, and so the centre of this dog park in Leichhardt is the perfect place.
understand how the canine brain and the human brain are different. Our brains are structured so that approximately a third of the posterior cortex is devoted entirely to our sense of vision. And we differ in that respect from the canine, whose 1/3 of his brain is devoted entirely to the sense of smell. We have no cortical representation of smell at all. And in a way, a dog sniffing at a lamppost is detecting all the smells of all the previous dogs that have used it. And so he would have in his imagination a vision very similar to the one that you see on the lamppost, with perhaps the faces of all the dogs that have been there. And I think that this perfectly illustrates what a dog might see in his mind of that lamppost, translated into a human equivalent, if you like. Intuitive understanding is absolutely brilliant.